welcome to yet another edition of Let's Talk on DNT Work. My name is Olujoke Mosako, and the topic before me today is the psychology of waiting. Well, we wait for different things. Everyone in life actually waits for something, but there are degrees to what we wait for. So that's why we're here to discuss such topic to help each and every one of us, overcome some of the challenges that may be coming our way, or whatever situation you are right now and how you're able to manage such situation. So doing this topic with me today is Pastor Jakes Adeyinka. I'm so excited because I'm having to speak to him one-on-one like that. Thank you so much, Pastor Jakes, for coming to Let's Talk and do this topic with me. So Pastor Jakes is the pastor in charge of Ecclesia Without Walls. Is going to explain that to us and what God has been helping him to do with that. Thank you so much once again for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you. I'm so excited having you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joke, for having me. It's really it's an honor to be here, and likewise, I think it's really good to see you. It's been a long time, but getting to see you, it's quite encouraging to. I'm quite excited too. And maybe just to say for us in Ecclesia with our world, basically Ecclesia is the word, it's simply the word church. Mm-hmm. So the vision there is church without walls, where we have no limitation. So no walls to stop people from coming, and at the same time, we really do not have any wall that keeps us away from people. So you ask me to preach in any place where Jesus Christ is named and people love the Lord, you find me there. Okay. So no barriers, no hindrance to the people we serve and the gospel of Christ reaching everyone.
Mm. Thank you so much for that. I think thank God for technology. It has really given the gospel a leverage and reaching out to so many other people, even without being enclosed in a particular place. May God continue to help you as you continue in this journey. All right. So while the essence of this program is actually to discuss the psychology of waiting. In your own understanding and knowledge, how would you explain waiting when it comes to this, the focus actually, what exactly is even the psychology of waiting? If we want to talk about it, how does that relate?
Okay. So maybe just so people understand, particularly when people get to hear the word psychology, many times people are like, wow, what have these people entered? But I think it's maybe just to break it down in simple format. It's just the mental preparedness. I'll put it that way. And the mental preparedness and emotional preparedness. That we go through, right? Whether as believers or as humans, but because in this context, I will be speaking more to believers. However, it is applicable to to every human being that just lives this life. So it's that mental, emotional, psychological preparedness that we go through, I would say, in the incubation phase before we see the manifestation of whatever or the results of whatever we're really hoping for, basically. So that journey from what you're expecting to what you receive to when you receive it, basically that journey, the preparedness across board, that means it deals with your emotion, your social frame of mind, then of course also your mind, then also the spiritual preparedness within that journey, okay, before your expectant or desired objective actually does manifest.
So how difficult is it while waiting? Because only those who wear the shoes will be able to explain, right?
Okay. So I think I would, to a large extent, so I would want to draw from, I would speak a lot and reference Abraham, you know, and again, I encourage many of us to really look at the life. I think when you talk about waiting, one of the persons that we will need to look at closely is the patriarch, Abraham, and of course, and Sarah. You know, it speaks volumes to the process of them getting to hear from God and waiting several years. Sincerely, if you had said you are waited for a long time, I will tell people, look, you need to really look at this part right. And I would maybe speak extensively about him at some point just to, expatiate. And the fact is this, every human being on earth, you would have to wait at some point. So I give you an instance. A young man goes through life, he waits for his results, gets into school, then there's a waiting time when he gets married. As a matter of fact, he gets married, then his wife conceives. And, there's a waiting period. There's also a 9-month waiting period, right? So the fact is this, waiting applies to every human being. Every human being, you would have to wait for one thing or the other in your life. It's a constant factor. So the question is, waiting is a constant factor. What just changes along the line is the processes and some of the preparations, the conditions, then the actions we take, in the course of waiting. Of course, these are the variables. There are several variables, environmental factors that will come in. And when I mean environmental, spiritual factors that will come in and all that. So these are variables that actually come into play. However, one thing is constant. You would have to wait. But then the time lag in terms of the time frame from when you wait to when you get the result, again, some of these factors and your actions also can prolong it or can actually shorten it. So
Okay.
maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah,
Yeah, then allow you.
it's true. You know what you just said, right? Because I was coming to anxiety, anticipation, how it affects the process of waiting, and then you just mentioned the way you wait, the what you do while you're waiting. So can you just put all of this together while you speak further on how you wait?
Okay, so fantastic. So I'll say that the first thing I want to maybe talk about the psychology of waiting. So I'll pull from a lesson. Like I said, I want to really talk about Abraham. And for context, that will be from Genesis 12 to 25. It's a long read, but again, just to draw attention to that, just to reference that chapter of the Bible. Now, the first thing we see was he actually had a promise. So God spoke to Abraham and gave him hope, right? And again, back to my example of, a woman that is pregnant. Now she has to wait 9 months, but, in the course of waiting, what happens to her? She has an expectation. There's a hope that I would have a child. I will deliver my child after 9 months, right? So that's the expectation. Now, in that course of waiting, like I said, you would see, that woman that is pregnant will go through many things. So there'll be a lot of hormonal changes that will make, sometimes she will get angry and all that. And as a matter of fact, sometimes she might give her husband some assignments that are quite weird. Now, a dear friend told me something now when his wife was pregnant and she really wanted to eat something. Now, in this part of the world, again, because I'm talking to, a global space. So in this part of the world, we have a particular kind of fish. It's locally prepared and then it's mixed with flour and, it's fried. It is quite a delicacy for some, but it's not really common. Now, the wife tells him, my husband, I want to eat this specific thing. And the young man is wondering, he's like, where am I going to get this from? You get. So guess what he does? He goes for a particular trip, like a 2-hour trip, and he found that fish. You know what? He bought that, that fish prepared from the seller. The vendor was actually saying he bought a lot. And guess what? He arrives there and the wife was looking at him and she was like, you've just met a desire. Now, notice that that fish is not the end, because the end is what she wants to deliver. But in the process, like I said, there were a few changes. So, in the course of her changes in her emotions, changes in many things, and she was like eating it, but you won't believe it, Joke. After like about 5 or so, she said she was tired, that it's now irritating her. The guy's mind was like, how do we go through this journey? Like, this. But that was just so those were small or temporal changes, in that pathway. However, what does that mean? That was one change, but there were several other changes that, came to bear. And the fact is this, I may be speaking a bit to anxiety, and maybe I may speak to it at some point also, is the fact that, whilst waiting, because of the length of time, sometimes, like I said, you may wait for some things, and sometimes depending on the quality or the weight of what you're waiting for, could make the length or the anxiety attached from it, and maybe sometimes the consequences attached to whatever you're waiting for. The anxiety can actually be much. So I give you another instance. When a loved one goes in for a surgery, the anxiety of what happens, what is happening there, how is the person, could actually make the anxiety level may be more compared to, somebody that your loved one just went in for, a quick makeup fix, right? You're both waiting, but the degree and the intensity of a surgery, a life-threatening issue compared to maybe a normal fix, just a makeup fix and all that, you're both waiting, but the anxiety required for that will actually be more. Why? Because your emotions are more tied. Then you are also aware that the consequences of any mistake, or something going wrong can actually have an impact. So that makes it. So in essence, even when waiting, the fact is your emotions are connected to whatever you're waiting for. Then the consequences of perhaps the results not going as planned could actually have an impact also on your emotions, could have an impact on you as you think, and fear factor could actually come in, which is actually very related to what we call anxiety. You're worried what could happen, you're afraid this could actually happen and all that. However, the antidotes to it, but again, maybe I won't speak to the antidotes for now, and maybe perhaps as you ask follow-up questions, I may be able to speak to some of those.
Okay, so now with what you just mentioned, by giving the surgery and the makeup fix, what I could deduce is there are major waiting and there are minor waiting. Okay, so could you give us the major waiting that could put people in a slope that, they could be depressed, pained, and maybe feel like God is not just there?
Very good question. Now, going back to my subject matter now, the lesson I'm drawing from Abraham, God showed him a vision. God told him what he was going to do. And maybe, by the way, just something to, like I'd mentioned, in waiting, usually you have an expected end. There's usually a goal, right? That is the essence of waiting, is there's something you're waiting upon. You're waiting upon something, that, okay, there's something I want to do. And as such, you're going through a journey. Now, in the case of Abraham, which, if I'll put it that way, I'll put it that's a major wait. Why? It's linked to the destiny. So see it this way, and maybe perhaps let me see if I can read a few. Let me read Genesis 13:14-15, just to draw a lesson from it. God said, lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward. So there was a direction. God said, look. And he said, and southward, and eastward, and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give, and to thy seed forever. Now, I pause there. So what was God doing? God was promising him Canaan, and God was also promising his descendants. So what that means is the weight of this is a transgenerational impact. God was promising him a future, not just for himself. You see how powerful this is, but also for his lineage. And as a matter of fact, and we have come to benefit from it. But you will think after God promised him, you will just think, oh, within 2 hours, this was it. But guess what? It took years. And you and I know this story very well, right? So after God called him, now it was a difficult time. Why? You will see that a lot of things happened. So God told Abraham this, and God showed him something beautiful. So God has showed me, but he needed now to wait, and wait for not just 1 year. He didn't wait for 2 years. He didn't wait for 3 years. He didn't wait for 4 years. As a matter of fact, you would expect that since God said it, it should happen immediately. But it didn't just happen like that. Abraham had to wait. Sarah herself had to wait to a point that, okay, God would speak to Sarah and Sarah would laugh. You know what? That meant Sarah had gotten to a point where she said, please don't mock me. Just don't mock me. You know what that meant? It meant that Sarah had heard so much, the fact that she was used to her condition. So the fact is this, she said, look, there's no point in waiting. And, and maybe just to digress, not out of this place, but just to say that whilst Abraham was waiting, his name called Abram, right? That is, God had to now change his name. And see the very interesting thing about God changing his name. God gives him a name, calling him Father of Nations. And God is now telling this Father of Nations, just wait. And, so I'm sure his friends will be calling him Father of Nations. So it's like, Father of Nations, where are your nations? So do you know what? That is a recipe for shame. That is a recipe for anxiety, because in your mind, you're like asking God, when, God, when, God, when? Then you even see your neighbors. And let me be honest with you. I'm convinced. How do I know this? Abraham was a man of prayer. Abraham was one that also had influence upon people. So Lot had seen Abraham have impact upon them. And remember carefully that Abraham had also prayed for some kings. Remember when they were about taking his wife Sarah and all that, he prayed for kings and all that. So you see that some of these patriarchs that even had delays, that had to wait, particularly even for their wives to conceive. There were instances where they prayed for people and the people got results. They had children. Their wombs were open in some city. Abimelech, it was a case character, right, for one of the patriarchs. And yet the wife was barren. What does that tell you? It means people will come to you while you're waiting, and God will put gifts and abilities in you. He will put a wise word in your mouth. He will put things to encourage others. You are going through the journey, and imagine you are there. People are coming to you, Joke, and say, oh, Joke, we are waiting. And you encourage the person, and guess what? Coincidentally, the person may even get his own result earlier than you. And the person will even give testimony and say, oh, praise God. And share with people and say, oh, I was waiting, I was mentally strained, but I met our dear sister Joke. She encouraged me and she prayed with me. And guess what? 1 week later, bam. And that was the case of Abraham. So Abraham had several people around him. To show you that it was a serious thing, Joke, Sarah had gotten to a place where, she was under so much pressure. And you know what she did? She took Hagar, if you recall. She gave her own maid, to Abraham. And the moment she did, as if, life was just waiting to just tell Abraham that, look at it. Guess what? She conceived. And the Bible was revealing to us clearly that the moment she did, she despised her mistress. You recall? Yeah. That means she began to mock Sarah and say, Sarah, look at you. You call yourself a woman. There's nothing womanly about you. So what does that mean? Sarah was really not happy, but you know the story. She handled her hardly and she left. But the thing was, you will now see that Abraham will be asking himself, so God, why did you delay me all this while? That means the problem was I had the ability in me. But God, why would you do this and all? But that was the thing. God did it through her. Ishmael was born. But imagine God coming back to Abraham and telling Abraham, do you know that Ishmael is even not the promise? If I were around Abraham was like, God, are you joking with me at this point? But God told him, still wait. So what does that mean? In the period of waiting, sometimes there might be tokens. They are not the end. They are not the main objective. But in the course of it, because we are humans and there are frailties, right? You will find out that you may have some consolations, but that is not the final bus stop, if I'll put it that way. But they might just be consolations along the lines, just to keep you in the journey of waiting. But maybe just to conclude on this point, The fact is, there are major events in our lives that require us to wait. And I gave an example of waiting for something minor, for like, ordinary makeup and all that. The impact of it, the consequence, the resultant effect of whatever goes wrong or whatever goes right is not as much as someone that is just there to do her nails. So a woman that is about to push to deliver, even in the delivery, a woman that is delivering a quadruplet or triplet or twins, you may not compare that with a woman that is delivering just one child. And even if it's one child, if she has complications, you see, it brings in a level of sensitivity. So now there are destiny defining things that will, or, weightier things that will require, it will have a high level of emotional, anxiety. You would have a lot of emotional connection. It will require a longer wait compared to somebody, that maybe may not be doing something more. It's something not quite substantial. So all will have weight, but again, determining on the level and the degree and the intensity of this. So maybe I'll pause here, and so I
Yes.
don't go on and on now.